Welcome to Season 2 of Our World with Norman Busigu. Now the premise of the show is quite simple. I'm going to report on and explore important topics affecting real people like you and me. Now within this there are two aims. Firstly, to have a positive social impact, and secondly, to inform. In this episode, I'll be zoning into the alarming rise in youth unemployment that's occurred as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll be exploring if we, as young people, as young adults, have become the forgotten generation left to bear the after effects of the pandemic, such as having little to no work experience, it being harder to get a job, having less personal savings, and it being more difficult to get onto the property ladder. I'll be exploring where things are going and what things can be done to improve the state of play for us as young adults. Stay tuned because you don't want to miss this. In October 2020, it was reported that the unemployment rate in the UK rose to its highest level for more than 3 years. In the UK, the number of people being made redundant rose to the fastest rate on record as the economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic unravelled. Fast forward to March 2021, and data from The Guardian highlighted that young people accounted for nearly 2/3 of job losses since the pandemic. Also, of all unemployed 16 to 24-year-olds, 74% were unemployed for at least 6 months. Now, all of this data is really worrying to say the least. However, in response to this, some might say that, well, things simply have to improve given the successful rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination across the country. However, we have to take that with a pinch of salt because any new mutant variant of the virus, any significant rise in infection rates across the country, or a return to lockdowns could threaten to derail the recovery of the job market, and as a result, lead to a resurge in joblessness. Though Chancellor Rishi Sunak implemented the furlough scheme as one of several measures to help mitigate the impacts of unemployment and income loss, the question can be asked, will this be enough to overcome the lasting damage from unemployment early in the careers of young adults in particular? This is a really important question, given that underlying trend suggests that young adults of today have less wealth than young adults of a generation ago. Now, a generation of young adults could be lost and forced to fend for themselves due to long periods of time out of work and a lack of proper support. Many young adults that I know who've been unable to get work during this period or break through into the working world have said it's been due to factors such as internships being postponed or cancelled altogether, and jobs and employment opportunities either not existing anymore or being very, very, very difficult to come by. Now, this situation leaves many young adults in limbo and at risk because as time goes on and as the gaps on their CV continue to grow, they run the risk of being permanently limited to roles that can be regarded as low-skilled and low-paid. Of course, however, we need to appreciate the challenging position the government is in, walking a delicate tightrope, implementing tier systems and lockdowns to save lives in the name of the public health agenda, and balancing this against getting the economy back on its feet to ensure that entire industries and livelihoods aren't completely wiped out in the process. Now, regardless of what the government does or doesn't do, it's sadly becoming apparent that significantly lasting damage is being done, with many being prompted to retrain, notably young adults who were in the retail, art or hospitality industries which were terribly hit by the pandemic. Now, arguably an important starting point is to be honest with young adults to let them know what the true gravity of the situation is, particularly what could happen when things such as the furlough scheme come to an end. Now, unfortunately, although there is a greater focus now on things such as job creation and creating more training schemes for young adults, there are certain areas of the country that suffer from greater levels of deprivation. And as a result, it will be harder to jumpstart and revitalise those job markets and to really reintegrate young adults back into the working world in those areas. That being said, here are some ideas of what could be done to improve the state of play for young adults moving forward to get them back into the world of work. Francis O'Grady, the General Secretary of the TUC, said urgent action was necessary from the government to support jobs recovery as COVID-19 restrictions were eased, including a reboot of the £2 billion Kickstart Job Scheme, which provides job placements for under 25s. One report suggests it will take 1,000 new jobs and training places a day to get back to pre-pandemic levels by October of 2021, and to avoid a 50% rise in the number of 16 to 24-year-olds not in employment, education, or training. Lastly, putting strong investment and focus in upskilling schemes to help workers find new opportunities in the post-pandemic economy is suggestible. It's very clear that the COVID crisis is far from over, and even if a vaccine is distributed amongst the masses, the repercussions of 2020 will be felt for a very, very long time to come. That means that the risk of losing a COVID generation to long-term youth unemployment is very real. So questions now turn to, well, what practical steps can be taken to mitigate these worrying outcomes and to support young adults at the early stages of their career? Well, we really need to lean on policymakers to put additional provisions in place to create new jobs, training schemes, and new innovative initiatives that creatively support people during this crisis. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Our World of Norman Busigu, and until the next time, stay safe and stay blessed.